Do you think that there are parts on these initiations that we could look again with a second view? Is there any other way to go in a better future?
Austerity or policies designed at dramatically curbing public expenditure, for instance, for a while, cutting into wages, cutting into social benefits and all of that, might be solutions for the short term and have sort of worked. Maybe something else could also have worked, but that anyway has worked in a number of countries. If I look at Latvia a couple of years ago, if I look at what has happened in Ireland, if you're operating on a 2-3 year time per course, this can be an option to take. But if you're operating on a time horizon which encompasses potentially generations, it will not, because all it will do is to completely dry out economic circuits and not replacing it by anything. In that sense, I agree with all those who say that austerity in Greece has failed, and it has failed dramatically. Above all, because simply nothing positive and nothing productive has happened. There's been no increased competitiveness. How could there be, by the way? And I wonder on what. There's been a bleeding out of economic circuits and of household treasuries, and that's about all we've seen over the last 5 or 6 years. But the big problem is, as long as we don't get the massive pile of debt out of the way, or at least part of it, there is hardly any better solution than continuing the policies that we've seen over the past years. Whether or not there be now an extension of rescue programs for a year or for 6 months or for 2 years, at the end of any period, it is very likely that we're going to find ourselves again in a situation very similar to the one at the beginning of the period. And if I look at proposals that are now being made, which would involve further pension cuts and primary surpluses, which would still have to reach something like 3 percentage points of GDP over a few years. 3 percentage points of GDP in budget expenditure terms means 10. How would you expect the Greeks to be able to democratically tolerate budget revenue by 10% in excess of budget expenditure for longer than a year or two before they would ask for something in return? And everybody who tries to impose this must know this as well, or else they don't know how democracy and elections work.